Welcome to Scoli Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable, let the day soften around you, and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or simply enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1: Arrival in Edinburgh at Dusk. The journey begins in the blue-gray hour, when the day has not quite gone, and the first lamps are beginning to gather along the streets. Edinburgh rises slowly into view, not all at once, but in layers. A dark line of rooftops, a scatter of chimneys, a church spire, standing still against the evening sky. And above it all, on its high stone seat, the shape of Edinburgh Castle rests on Castle Rock. Castle Rock is an ancient volcanic plug, made of hardened rock left behind from a very old volcano. Long after that fire had gone quiet, ice moved across this land and shaped the rock further, smoothing and carving the ground around it. Now the castle stands there like a steady marker, looking out over Scotland's capital city. At dusk, the stone seems to hold the weather. Rain has passed through recently, leaving the streets dark and gently shining. The cobbles reflect amber light from the lamps. Windows glow softly in the tall buildings. A faint chill rises from the ground, and the air carries the clean scent of rain on stone. Edinburgh's historic centre is made of two parts that sit beside one another in remarkable contrast. The old town follows a medieval pattern, built along a ridge that runs down from the castle. Its streets are narrow in places, with tall tenement buildings standing close together. A tenement is a building divided into separate homes, and in old Edinburgh, these buildings often rose high because space inside the city was limited. From the ridge of the old town, small passages slip away between buildings. Some are called closes, narrow passageways between buildings. Others are called wynds, narrow lanes or alleys. They lead down by steps and slopes into small courtyards, hidden doorways, and quieter corners, where the sound of the larger street becomes soft and distant. There is a feeling here of time folded gently into the walls. Yet the old town is not a museum piece, sealed away from the present. People still live and work here. Buses pass, cafe lights shine, a gull calls from a rooftop, and somewhere below, footsteps move over wet paving stones. The old and the modern share the same evening air. Beyond the old town lies the new town, planned in the Georgian period, from the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Georgian architecture is known for balance and order, straight streets, broad squares, pale stone fronts, and rows of elegant windows. After the close, rising lanes of the old town, the new town feels more open, with wide streets and graceful terraces arranged in careful lines. Together, Edinburgh's old and new towns are recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a place considered important to the shared cultural heritage of the world. Their value is not only in individual buildings, but in the way two different ideas of a city stand side by side, one growing upward and inward from the medieval ridge, the other planned outward with light, space, and symmetry. As evening deepens, the skyline becomes simpler, details fade into silhouette. The castle darkens against the sky. Church spires, chimneys, and the long ridge of the old town form a quiet edge between earth and cloud. To the east, Arthur's Seat rises in Holyrood Park, another volcanic feature, broad and calm above the city. Its slopes are softer than Castle Rock, grass-covered and open to the wind, but it too speaks of the ancient forces beneath the land. The streets begin to settle. In a close off the main way, a single lamp throws warm light onto rough stone. The passage is narrow enough that the evening feels held there, sheltered from the larger movement of the city. A small window glows above. The cobbles are uneven, worn by many feet, and the walls seem to breathe out the coolness of the rain. From somewhere nearby comes the quiet sound of traffic, softened by distance and stone. A door closes gently. A gull circles once over the rooftops, pale against the last of the light, then drifts away toward the darkening sky. The city does not become silent, but it becomes calm in a particular way, as if each sound has more space around it. Looking back toward Castle Rock, the lamps of the streets below it shine like small, steady embers. The castle itself is mostly shadow now, its outlines strong but peaceful. It has watched over many changes. Old streets rebuilt, new streets planned, generations passing beneath its height. Tonight, it simply rests there, part of the hill, part of the sky, part of the city's long memory. Edinburgh at dusk offers a quiet beginning. Stone, rain, lamplight, and history are gathered together, not hurried, not separate, but gently layered. Soon the evening will deepen fully. The closes and winds will grow darker. The windows will glow a little longer, then one by one become still. Above the roofs, the sky will turn from blue-gray to deeper blue, and the castle will remain on its ancient rock. And later, when pale morning returns, the same city will be waiting in another kind of light, ready for a slow walk along the Royal Mile. Chapter 2. A Slow Morning on the Royal Mile. In the early morning, the Royal Mile is softer than its name suggests. The stones hold a pale gray light, and the long ridge of Edinburgh's Old Town seems to wake little by little. Shop windows are still dim, though here and there a lamp glows behind glass. A few shutters are lifted. A cafe door opens briefly, letting out the warm scent of bread, coffee, and rain-damp wool. Above the roofs, gulls move in slow circles, their calls drifting over chimneys and spires. The Royal Mile runs between Edinburgh Castle, high on Castle Rock, and the Palace of Holyrood House, down near the foot of the ridge. It is called a mile, though it is a little longer than a modern mile. Really, it is a chain of old streets joined together. Castle Hill at the upper end, then Lawn Market, the High Street, Canongate, and finally Abbey Strand near Holyrood. Each name belongs to a slightly different part of the same gentle descent. At this hour, the walk begins near the castle, where the road is broad for a while, and the sky feels open. The cobbles are uneven underfoot, darkened in places by last night's rain. The walls nearby are built of stone in many shades, charcoal, brown, dove-gray, and the muted gold of weathered sandstone. Edinburgh's old town was not made all at once. It has been repaired, rebuilt, altered, and lived in for centuries, yet the older street pattern remains clear, especially in the way the main road follows the crest of the ridge. On either side, narrow passages slip away between tall buildings. Some are called closes, and some are called wynds. A close is a narrow passageway between buildings, often leading to steps, courtyards, or hidden corners. A wynd is a narrow lane or alley, usually winding or steep. In the morning coolness, one close may hold a pool of blue shadow, while the street outside brightens. Stone steps descend from the Royal Mile, worn smooth in the middle by many feet over many years. The old town grew upward as well as outward. In medieval Edinburgh, space inside defensive boundaries was limited, so buildings became tall and crowded close together. Many were tenements, buildings divided into separate homes. Some rose many stories above the street, with families, workshops, storage rooms, and small businesses layered one above another. The city has changed greatly since then, but this sense of height and closeness still gives the old town its particular shape. A little farther down, the street narrows and settles into the Lawn Market. The name recalls an older market area, though the morning now is quieter, filled with the soft sounds of a modern city beginning its day. A delivery van pauses by the curb. A bicycle passes without hurry. The first visitors look up at signs and carved lintels, while residents move more directly, as if following paths their feet already know. There are shop fronts here selling books, woolen scarves, maps, prints, and small things made to be carried home. Their windows begin to glow one by one. Behind the glass, folded cloth rests in quiet stacks. Postcards show mountains, lochs, and islands not yet reached on this journey. In another window, paper goods are arranged with care, and the faint smell of ink and card seems to mingle with the cool mineral scent of the street. The High Street opens gradually around St. Giles Cathedral. Its crown-like spire rises above the rooftops, delicate and strong against the morning sky. St. Giles is often called a cathedral, and it is one of the most important historic churches in Scotland. More precisely, it is the High Kirk of Edinburgh. Kirk is a Scots word for church. The building has stood at the heart of the city's religious life for many centuries, though like much in Edinburgh, it has been changed and restored over time. Outside St. Giles, the stones are broad and slightly shining. Pigeons step carefully between the joints. The carved details around doors and windows catch the light in quiet ridges and hollows. Even without entering, one can sense the long continuity of use. people gathering, speaking softly, listening, passing by, returning. History here is not only in dates and names, but in the touch of hands on railings, in thresholds crossed repeatedly, in the patience of old stone. From the high street, the closes continue to fall away on either side. Some lead to small courtyards, enclosed open spaces tucked among buildings. Others descend by steep steps toward lower streets. The ridge is easier to understand when you pause at one of these openings and look down. The Royal Mile follows the spine of the hill, while the lanes drop away like ribs. Lower down, the Canongate begins. Canongate is the historic district at the lower end of the Royal Mile. Its name has old roots connected with the canons, or clergy, of Holyrood Abbey, and the word gate in this setting comes from an older word for road or way. The feeling here is a little more open. The buildings seem to breathe with more space between them. There are still closes, still carved stones, still signs of long habitation, but the street begins to lean toward Holyrood, toward the parkland beyond, and toward the volcanic slopes of Arthur's Seat. The morning has grown brighter now. The cobbles no longer look black with rain, but silver at their edges. A church bell sounds somewhere behind the roofs, not loudly, only enough to mark the hour. The smell of fresh bread is stronger for a moment, then fades as the walk continues downhill. Soon the old ridge will be left behind. The closes and courtyards, the shop windows and worn steps will settle back into the pattern of the city's day. Beyond Edinburgh, roads will open gradually into green fields, low hills, and river country. And in time, the journey will turn northwest, towards Stirling, where the River Forth moves in wide, looping bends beneath another old castle of stone. Chapter 3. North to Stirling and the River Forth. Leaving Edinburgh behind, the road turns gently northwest, away from the close-set stone of the old city and into a softer lowland landscape. The change comes gradually. Streets become broader roads, buildings give way to open ground, the horizon begins to widen. There are fields now, green and carefully divided, with hedges, fences, and old stone walls marking the edges of farms. In places, trees gather along streams, their leaves moving lightly in the breeze. The journey is not hurried. Scotland unfolds here in quiet layers, a farmhouse set back from the road, a line of sheep on a hillside, a church tower appearing for a moment above trees, then slipping behind them again. The land rises and falls in easy folds. Beyond the nearer fields, the hills are softened by a pale haze, blue-gray and still. This is the country between city and highlands, a region shaped by rivers, routes, and crossings. Stirling lies northwest of Edinburgh, and for many centuries it was important because of where it stood. The word often used is strategic, which simply means important because of position. Stirling sits near the meeting place of different kinds of Scotland, lowland farmland and river valley to the south and east, hillier country opening to the north and west. Roads and older tracks passed this way, so did people, animals, goods, messages, and stories. As Stirling comes closer, the River Forth begins to appear in the landscape. It does not run in a straight line. Instead, it winds slowly across the flat ground in broad, shining curves. These looping bends are called meanders. A meander is simply a curve in a river, formed over time as flowing water wears away one bank and lays down silt along another. From a distance, the Forth looks almost as though it is resting in the land, taking its time as it moves toward the sea. Near Stirling, the river's loops are especially graceful. In some places the water catches the light and glimmers like a ribbon. In others, it hides behind trees or low ground, then appears again bright and quiet. Birds move through the fields. Rooks or crows call from high branches, their voices carried by the air. The sound is plain and familiar, belonging to farmland and old trees. Above the town rises Stirling Castle. It stands on a rocky height, visible from far away. The castle's rock is an outcrop, a visible piece of rock rising above the surrounding land. From such a place, it was possible to see across river bends, fields, roads, and distant hills. The castle did not become important only because of its walls, but because of the landscape around it. Stirling Castle was one of Scotland's most important royal castles. It is associated with Scottish monarchs, including Stuart kings and queens, and over the centuries it held courtly rooms, halls, chapels, and places of ceremony. Like many great castles, it changed with time. Buildings were added, repaired, altered, and restored, so that the stonework carries many periods within it. It is not only a fortress, but also a place where royal life once unfolded: meals, councils, music, formal visits, and ordinary daily work. Approaching the castle, the ground rises, the streets become steeper, and the old town gathers close beneath the walls. Stone houses, narrow lanes, and quiet corners lead upward toward the entrance. At the top is the esplanade, an open paved area outside a large building or fortress. Here the air feels wider again. A breeze moves across the stones. The castle walls hold a little warmth from the pale sun, and the view opens in every direction. From these heights, Stirling's importance becomes easy to understand without needing many dates or names. The River Forth winds below in its silver loops. The flat karst lands, rich low fields near the river, stretch outward in green and gold. Farther off, the Wallace Monument stands on a wooded hill, a tall Victorian tower remembering William Wallace and the history connected with this region. Stirling Bridge, too, belongs to the area's memory. Yet from the castle heights, these landmarks can be taken in gently, as part of a wide and layered landscape, rather than as separate moments of drama. The eye follows the river for a long while. It curves, disappears, returns, and curves again. The fields are marked by hedgerows, walls, and narrow roads. A tractor may move slowly in the distance. Trees cluster around farmhouses. Small shadows pass over the ground when clouds drift across the sun. To the north and west, the hills gather more closely, suggesting the beginning of rougher country. This is one of the quiet pleasures of Stirling, the way it shows transition. Behind lies the route from Edinburgh, with its city stones, chimneys, and evening lamps. Ahead, the land begins to lift toward wooded slopes, glens, and lochs. A glen is a valley, often long and narrow, and the glens to come will lead into places where water and hills sit close together. For now, there is only the calm view from the castle rock. The breeze moves softly across the esplanade. The old stone stands steady. Below, the River Forth continues its unhurried meanders through the green land, reflecting the changing sky. And when the time comes to leave Stirling, the road bends onward with the same quiet patience, towards softer hills, deeper shade, and the first still waters of the Trossachs. Chapter 4: The Trossachs and Loch Katrine. The road into the Trossachs seems to soften as it goes. After the open views near Stirling, the land begins to fold more closely around the way ahead. Hills rise in rounded shapes, not yet the high, bare mountains of the Western Highlands, but something gentler, greener, and more sheltered. Trees gather along the slopes, ferns lean over damp banks. A small burn, or stream, follows the roadside for a while, slipping over stones with a quiet, silver sound. The Trossachs are known for this kind of landscape: wooded hills, lochs, and glens. A loch is the Scottish word for a lake, or sometimes for a long inlet of the sea. A glen is a valley, often long and narrow, shaped by water, ice, and time. Here, the glens feel enclosed and calm, with moss on old walls, leaves moving in the light wind, and the scent of rain held gently in the ground. This region is often thought of as a threshold into the Highlands. A threshold is a place of crossing, and the Trossachs feel like that. Not one world ending and another beginning all at once, but a gradual change. Lowland fields give way to hill pasture, then to woodland, then to slopes that seem to lean toward the north and west. Beneath the surface, this change is partly geological. Nearby runs the Highland Boundary Fault, a long natural line where different rock regions of Scotland meet. It is not something one necessarily sees as a single mark in the ground, but its influence can be felt in the changing shapes of the land. In modern terms, much of this area lies within Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park, which was established in 2002. The park protects and manages a wide variety of places: lochs, woods, farms, villages, hills, and paths. It is not an untouched wilderness, but a lived-in landscape where people have worked, traveled, planted, fished, written, and rested for a very long time. The way narrows toward Loch Katrine. The name rests quietly in the mouth. Loch Katrine. It is a freshwater loch, meaning an inland lake rather than a sea inlet. Its water stretches between wooded slopes, long and calm, with small changes of color moving across the surface. Near the shore, the water may appear dark green where it reflects the trees. Farther out, under cloud, it becomes pewter gray. When a brief opening of light passes overhead, a pale gleam travels across it, then fades again. Birch trees grow near the path, their pale trunks marked with dark lines, their small leaves flickering in the breeze. Oak may stand more heavily nearby, with broad leaves and twisting branches. Rowan trees, sometimes called mountain ash, add lighter shapes, and later in the year their berries brighten to red. Conifers with their dark needles gather on some slopes and give the hills a deeper green. Underfoot, the path is soft in places, with moss and old leaves. Ferns spread at the banks. The air here has a green scent after rainfall. It is the smell of wet bark, soil, bracken, and water. The loch itself seems to hold the weather. Low cloud rests on the hills, and the reflections below are blurred at the edges. A ripple begins near the shore, perhaps from a small fish or a light touch of wind, and then widens slowly, ring by ring, until it disappears into the larger stillness. At a quiet jetty, the boards are weathered by rain and sun. A rope lies coiled beside a post. The wood feels silvered and smooth in places, rough in others. Looking out from here, the loch appears almost level with the sky. The wooded slopes descend toward the water, and the water answers them with softened copies of their shapes. Nothing in the view asks to be hurried. Loch Katrine has also had an important practical role. Since the 19th century, it has helped supply water to Glasgow, Scotland's largest city. Engineers in the Victorian period created works that carried clean water from this loch toward the city. Victorian means from the time of Queen Victoria, whose reign lasted from 1837 to 1901. The details of that engineering are complex, but the simple fact is graceful enough. Water gathered in this quiet Highland Edge landscape has flowed onward to serve homes, streets, and communities far away. The loch has also flowed through imagination. In 1810, Sir Walter Scott published a poem called The Lady of the Lake, set in this region. The poem helped bring the Trossachs into wider public attention and encouraged romantic views of Highland scenery, wooded shores, mirrored water, hidden glens, and hills touched by mist. Those views were shaped by literature and travel, as much as by the land itself. Yet standing beside Loch Katrine, it is easy to understand why writers and visitors lingered here. Still, the loch is not only a picture. It is water moving through a living place. Birds pass quietly over the surface, trees drop leaves into the shallows, rain enters from the hills, streams feed it, light changes it. The same view can become many views in the space of an hour. A short walk follows the shore for a while. The path keeps close to the water, then turns slightly into trees. The sound of the loch becomes softer there, screened by branches. Drops fall from leaves onto the moss below. The ground rises gently, giving a view back through the trunks. The long water, the far bank, the gray-white sky resting above the hills. By late afternoon, the colors become more muted. Green darkens into green-blue. The jetty grows quiet again. The ripples on Loch Katrine spread more slowly now, and the reflections of the wooded slopes begin to fade under cloud. Beyond these softer hills, the journey will gradually open toward broader glens, higher slopes, and the misty western highlands. But for now, the Trossachs remain still around the water, holding the road, the trees, and the loch in one calm green pause. Chapter 5. Through Glencoe, in Mist. The road into Glencoe arrives quietly, as though it knows to lower its voice. The hills gather on either side, not all at once, but slowly, with a patient widening of scale. The grass darkens after rain. The stones beside the road shine with a soft, wet gleam. Ahead, low cloud drifts across the slopes, loosening and closing again, so that the mountains seem to breathe in and out of sight. Glencoe is one of the best-known glens in the Western Highlands. A glen is a valley, often long and narrow, shaped by water, ice, and time. Here the valley floor opens broadly beneath steep mountainsides, and the ridges rise high above it. A ridge is the long high line of a hill or mountain, like the back of land against the sky. Today, much of that sky is hidden. The cloud rests low, and the upper ridges are softened into gray. From a safe place beside the road, the valley can be taken in slowly. There is no need to climb. The view is enough. Water comes down everywhere after rain. Thin waterfalls thread themselves over dark rock, some bright and silvery, some nearly hidden until they move. They fall from ledges and gullies, joining burns below. A burn is a small stream, and here the burns murmur under the hush of the glen. Their sound is steady and muted, not loud but always present, as if the mountain is quietly speaking to itself. The shape of Glencoe is part of a much older story than any human road or village. The rocks here are very old and geologically complex. Long ago, ancient volcanic activity helped form the foundations of this landscape. Later, during Ice Age periods, glaciers moved through the valley. Glaciation means the shaping of land by glaciers, those great slow rivers of ice that once pressed across the highlands. As they moved, they ground and carved the rock beneath them. This is why the valley has its wide, open floor and steep sides. It is often described as a U-shaped valley, broad at the bottom, rising sharply at the edges, shaped by ice rather than by a single narrow river. The explanation is simple, but the effect is vast. Standing below, looking across wet grass to the slopes beyond, it is easy to feel how slowly land can change, and how much quiet strength there is in time. The mist shifts again. For a moment, a darker buttress of rock appears high on the hillside, then fades as cloud moves over it. The colors here are gentle and deep: green grass, black peat, brown bracken, gray stone, and the pale white of falling water. In places the grass bends in the wind, all leaning one way as though listening. In other places, small patches of heather cling to the lower slopes, dusky and low among the stones. There are few sharp edges in the weather. Even the mountains, though steep and strong, are softened by rain. The whole glen feels wrapped in a fine veil. Cars pass now and then along the road, their sound arriving and leaving quickly, swallowed by distance. Then the quiet returns, filled only by running water and the faint movement of wind. Glencoe also holds human memory. It is associated with the massacre of Glencoe in 1692, a tragic event remembered with care in Scottish history. Here it is enough to acknowledge that sorrow gently, without turning it into a tale for this quiet hour. The landscape remains, and remembrance can be as simple as a pause, a respectful stillness, and the sound of rain on stone. The road continues through the valley floor. On either side, the mountains seem to stand apart from ordinary measurement. They do not need clear sunlight to be impressive. In mist, they feel even larger, because so much is only partly seen. A slope appears, then disappears. A high corrie, a bowl-shaped hollow in the mountainside, opens briefly in the cloud. A line of water marks a hidden stream, then the gray folds back over it. The western highlands are known for changeable weather. Atlantic air brings moisture from the sea, and rain can move in softly, leaving beads of water on fence wire, grass, and roadside signs. The air smells of wet earth and clean stone. Where the land flattens, small pools gather in the grass, reflecting the low sky. Every reflection is subdued, a little blurred by the wind. There is a feeling in Glencoe that comes from distance and scale. The valley is not empty but spacious. It holds road, water, rock, plants, memory, and passing travelers. It holds geology too old to easily imagine, and weather that changes from one minute to the next. It asks for no hurry. As the road bends onward, the glen begins, very gradually, to fall behind. The steep sides loosen. The mist gathers in the hollows and draws a soft curtain across the view. Water still runs down the dark slopes, but now the sound is farther away. The last glimpse is of wet grass, low cloud, and a pale ribbon of stream crossing the valley floor. Then the journey continues westward through rain-softened mountain country. Beyond Glencoe, the road moves toward Lochaber and Fort William. The clouds begin to lift in places, just enough to reveal wider hills and a suggestion of brighter sky beyond them. Somewhere ahead, often hidden and often cloud-crowned, rises the great mass of Ben Nevis, waiting quietly above the town and the loch. Chapter 6: Fort William and Ben Nevis. By the time the road reaches Fort William, the highlands have gathered themselves into a quieter, heavier shape. The hills seem closer here, rising in layers of green, brown, and shadow, their upper slopes often softened by low cloud. The air carries the cool dampness of the west, with a faint scent of pine, wet stone, and earth after rain. Fort William rests in the western highlands, near the long waters of Loch Linhay. A loch may be a lake, or as here, a sea loch, a narrow inlet where the sea reaches inland between the hills. Loch Linhay stretches away in gray and silver bands, its surface changing with the weather. One moment it is smooth and dull as pewter, the next, a light wind brushes it into small ripples that catch the pale sky. The town is often used as a base for visiting Ben Nevis, the mountain that rises nearby. Its name is known far beyond this quiet place, because Ben Nevis is the highest mountain in the British Isles. It reaches about 1,345 meters, or 4,413 feet, above sea level. Ben, like the Gaelic word bain, means mountain, and here the word feels simple and fitting. The mountain does not need to announce itself. It stands broad and patient above the glen, often partly hidden, as if the clouds have folded around its shoulders. From a safe place below, perhaps beside the loch or near a low woodland path, Ben Nevis can feel both near and distant. The lower slopes may show patches of grass, bracken, and dark conifers. Higher up, the land becomes rockier and more exposed. The summit, the top of the mountain, is frequently wrapped in cloud. Even when the valley is calm, the weather above can be harsh and changeable, with rain, strong winds, snow at times, and sudden poor visibility. For this reason, the mountain is best met with respect. Many people climb it with care, preparation, and knowledge of the conditions, but there is no need to hurry upward in order to understand its presence. From below, the mountain gives enough. The slow movement of mist across its slopes, the faint white lines of streams descending after rain, the way the light travels over rock and grass and disappears again. A narrow path near the lower ground leads through damp woodland. The trees hold beads of water on their needles and leaves. Underfoot, the earth is soft, dark, and springy, with moss growing along stones and roots. Somewhere nearby, water runs over rock in a clear, steady thread. It may be a small burn, carrying rain down from the higher slopes toward the loch. The habitats of Ben Nevis change with height. Lower down there may be woodland, grasses, and shrubs, sheltered by the shape of the glen. Higher up, plants must be tougher and lower to the ground, able to live with cold, wind, and thin soils. Near the top, the environment is sometimes called alpine-like. Alpine means connected with high mountain conditions, where the weather is colder and more exposed than it is below. In such places, life grows slowly and carefully. The mountain has also been important to the study of weather. From 1883 to 1904, a meteorological observatory stood on the summit. Meteorological simply means related to weather. The people who worked there recorded conditions from the very top of Ben Nevis, gathering observations of temperature, wind, cloud, rain, and snow. Their work helped build a clearer understanding of mountain weather, which can be very different from the weather in the valley below. It is pleasant to think of those records now, while watching cloud gather and loosen around the high ground. A bank of mist may drift across the mountain, hiding a ridge, then thinning just enough to reveal a pale streak of rock. The summit remains unseen, but its absence is gentle. Some landscapes are not meant to be fully displayed all at once. They are understood slowly, through glimpses. Later, the rain returns in a soft, steady way. It taps against the window of a quiet inn and darkens the sill. Inside, the light is warm and low. A cup of tea rests on a wooden table. A wool blanket lies folded over the back of a chair. The glass holds a faint reflection of lamplight, and beyond it, the loch is almost the same color as the sky. The room smells faintly of old timber, raincoats drying near the door, and something warm from the kitchen. Outside, the water of Loch Linhay moves in small, patient lines. The hills beyond it fade from green into blue-gray, then into the deeper color of evening. Now and then, a gull passes over the shore, its pale shape briefly visible against the dimming water. Fort William has the feeling of a place where journeys pause. Roads meet here. Walkers, cyclists, drivers, and railway passengers come and go. Yet in the soft rain, the town becomes still around the edges. The great mountain stands behind it, mostly hidden, while the loch opens quietly toward the sea. As evening settles, the windows grow softer with rain. The mountain streams continue their distant work, carrying water from stone to grass, from grass to burn, from burn to loch. Nothing needs to be hurried. The day has come down from the high slopes and gathered itself beside the water. And when morning returns, the road will begin to turn westward. Sea lochs will appear between the hills. Gulls will move above the tide. Villages, bridges, and cloud-shadowed mountains will slowly lead the way onward, toward the island of Skye. Chapter 7. The Road to Skye. The road west begins gently, as many highland roads do, with water appearing and disappearing beside the way. For a while there are hills, then trees, then a sudden opening where a loch lies under the sky, long and silver gray. A loch may be a lake, or, in places like this, a narrow inlet of the sea. A sea loch reaches inland from the coast, carrying salt water between slopes and shores, so that the land and ocean seem to rest together. The air through a slightly open window feels cooler now, touched with salt and rain. It carries the faint, clean scent of wet stone, seaweed, and grass. On the road ahead, soft rain moves across the windshield in fine lines, then clears again, leaving the mountains newly dark and shining. The clouds travel low, folding themselves around the higher ridges, so that one moment a summit is visible, and the next it has withdrawn into mist. This is a landscape of quiet changes. A village may appear with whitewashed houses, a small shop, a pier, a church, and a few boats drawn up near the shore. Then the road turns and the village is behind, replaced by open hillside and the pale gleam of water. Sometimes a railway line keeps company with the road for a while, curving along the shore or vanishing between trees. Sometimes there is only the road itself, bending between rock, bracken, and rough grass. At low tide, the edges of the sea lochs reveal dark stones and long ribbons of kelp. Kelp is a large brown seaweed that grows in cold coastal waters. When the tide is out, it lies across the shore in glossy strands, moving slightly where small waves continue to reach the land. Gulls call overhead, their voices carried on the damp wind, and far out on the water a buoy rocks slowly, rising and falling with the tide. In time, after a quiet stretch through mountains and along the coast, the road comes toward one of Scotland's most familiar views. Alien Donan Castle stands on a small tidal island, where three sea lochs meet: Loch Duich, Loch Long, and Loch Alsh. A tidal island is shaped by the rise and fall of the tide, joined or separated from surrounding land and water according to the sea's rhythm. The castle sits low and strong against the water, with stone walls, small windows, and a bridge leading toward it. Its reflection trembles in the loch, broken by ripples and the faint movement of rain. It looks very old, and the place itself does have medieval origins, but the building seen today is largely a 20th century restoration. Like many castles in Scotland, it is not a single untouched remnant from one age, but a layered place, carrying traces of earlier history, along with later rebuilding and care. There is no need to hurry here. The view is enough. The meeting of the lochs gives the water a wide, breathing stillness. Hills rise on every side, their lower slopes green, their upper parts softened by cloud. The castle seems to belong to the crossing of land and sea, to the tides, to the gray light, to the patient work of stone standing in weather. A little farther on, the road continues toward Kyle of Loch Alsh. The name Kyle often refers to a narrow strait, a channel where water passes between lands. Here the mainland draws close to the Isle of Skye. The island lies ahead not far across the water, its outlines shifting in the haze. Skye is the largest island of the Inner Hebrides, the island group off Scotland's west coast. The Inner Hebrides include places shaped by ocean weather, Gaelic history, crofting communities, cliffs, moorland, and mountains. The Skye Bridge comes into view gradually. It connects Kyle of Loch Alsh on the mainland to the Isle of Skye, and it opened in 1995. Its pale curve rises over the water with a simple grace, carrying the road from one shore to the other. Before the bridge, crossings to Skye depended on ferries along this route, and ferries still serve other island journeys around Scotland. Here, though, the road continues without interruption, lifting quietly above the strait. Crossing the bridge, the view opens on both sides. Below, the water is dark and smooth in places, ruffled in others by the wind. A few gulls move in wide circles over the tide. The mainland slips gently behind with its clustered houses and harbor edges. Ahead, Skye receives the road in soft colors, gray rock, green fields, and long slopes fading into low cloud. There is a feeling not of leaving the world behind, but of entering another expression of it. The same rain, the same stone, the same sea air are here, yet arranged differently. The light changes quickly, brightening along a break in the clouds, then dimming as another veil of weather passes over. A narrow road leads onward between fields where sheep graze with quiet attention, their wool marked by the damp. Dry stone walls and fence lines divide the land in soft patterns. By evening, the island has settled around the road. The air smells of salt, wet grass, and distant peat smoke from some hidden hearth or chimney. Beyond the fields, the dark shapes of the Quillen rest beneath cloud, not fully seen, only suggested. The road grows quieter. A last band of light lies over the water, and the sea locks hold it gently, as if carrying the day westward into stillness. Chapter 8. A Gentle Day on the Isle of Skye. Morning comes softly to the Isle of Skye, with cloud moving low over the hills, and a pale brightness resting on the water. The island seems to gather many kinds of Scotland into one quiet place. Mountain and moorland, sea cliff and sheltered bay, small villages, crofts, winding roads, and long views that change with every passing cloud. A single-track road curves away from the shore, narrow and calm, with passing places set into the side so that cars may pause for one another. Sheep graze close to the verge, their wool touched with rain. Beyond them, the ground opens into moorland, which means open land of low shrubs, grasses, and often wet, springy earth. In places, heather grows close to the ground, and pale bog cotton lifts its soft white heads above the damp places, trembling in the breeze. The air carries several scents at once. There is sea salt from the nearby water, wet grass from the fields, and now and then, a faint earthy trace of peat. Peat is partly decayed plant material that forms slowly in wet ground, and in parts of the highlands and islands it has long been cut and dried for fuel, though life here, like everywhere, has changed in many ways. Across the island, the mountains draw the eye without asking anyone to hurry toward them. Skye's most famous range is the Cuillin. They are serious mountains, best admired today from a safe distance, their sharp ridges and dark slopes shifting in and out of cloud. The Black Cuillin are made mainly of dark rocks called gabbro and basalt. Gabbro is a rough, dark igneous rock, formed from cooled molten material deep within the earth, and its texture can make the mountains look especially rugged. The Red Cuillin nearby are generally rounder and made largely of granite, giving them a softer shape, especially when the light rests on their slopes. The weather on Skye is shaped by the sea. This is called a maritime climate, meaning a climate strongly influenced by nearby ocean waters. It may be windy, rainy, mild, and changeable, with clouds moving quickly from west to east. A morning can begin in mist, open into a clear silver hour, then gather rain again before lunch. On Skye, the changing weather is part of the view. It lays shadows on the moor, draws veils across the mountains, and turns the sea from blue-gray to pewter, then back again. A little farther along the road, scattered houses appear, some beside fields, some tucked near the shore. Many places on Skye have a history of crofting. A croft is a small landholding, often with a house, a bit of land, and grazing rights for animals. Crofting is traditional in the highlands and islands, but it is not only a picture from the past. It is also a living part of rural life, with real work, regulations, weather, animals, and changing economic needs. A croft may hold sheep, hay ground, vegetables, or simply the traces of generations who worked close to the land and sea. The island's Gaelic heritage is also living, not only remembered. Scottish Gaelic appears in place names, signs, schools, songs, radio, local events, and community life. Not everyone on Skye speaks Gaelic, and the language has had different strengths in different times and places, but it remains part of the island's sound and identity. A place name may hold a memory of a hill, a bay, a saint, a farm, or a feature of the land. Even when the meaning is not explained, the names seem to belong to the slopes and waters they describe. By late morning, A short walk leads down toward a rocky shore. The path is low and easy, crossing grass made bright by rain. Small flowers grow close to the ground, and the wind presses gently against a coat sleeve. Below, waves fold against the rocks in steady, quiet motions. They do not crash today. They simply arrive, curve, whiten at the edge, and draw back again. Gulls pass overhead, their calls softened by distance. Across the bay, houses sit white and gray beneath the hills. The seaweed at the shore lies dark and shining where the tide has lowered, and little pools hold pieces of sky. There is no need to go far. Sky often gives its views in layers: a stone wall, a sheep field, a strip of road, a blue inlet, then mountains beyond. When rain returns, it comes first as a dimming of the far headland, then as a fine pattern on the water. The path turns back toward shelter. Indoors by a window, a warm drink waits on a wooden table. The glass is lightly misted at the edges. Outside, the rain moves across the bay in pale lines, and the hills fade into blue and gray. From this quiet room, the island feels both near and spacious. A cup is lifted slowly. The warmth gathers in the hands. Beyond the window, a croft house stands beside a fenced field. A sheep lowers its head to graze. The road glistens. A sign with Gaelic and English names points toward another village, another shore, another bend in the island. Afternoon opens gently after the rain. The clouds rise just enough to show the lower slopes of the Cuillin again. Light moves across the moorland, touching the heather, the wet stones, the pale grass. In the distance, a narrow waterfall appears for a while on a dark hillside, then disappears into shadow. By evening the wind eases. The bay grows smoother, holding the last light in long, quiet bands. The mountains become shapes rather than details, and the houses along the shore begin to glow one by one. Sea air drifts through the open space near the water, cool and clean. The day on sky closes without hurry. Moorland, croft, mountain, language, rain, and sea settle together in the fading light. In the morning the road will turn north again, toward broader skies, open peatlands, and the quiet northern coast. But for now the island rests behind a veil of evening, while soft light spreads across the water and slowly fades. Chapter 9. North Coast Quiet. In time, the road turns farther north, and Scotland opens into a wider, quieter shape. The hills become lower and more rounded. The trees grow fewer. The sky seems to take up more room, stretching from one pale edge of the horizon to the other. Clouds move slowly here, not because the wind is absent, but because there is so much space in which to watch them pass. The northern highlands are not one single landscape. They hold moorlands and peatlands, small settlements, low hills, sea cliffs, beaches, rivers, and quiet inlets where the tide moves with little fuss. A road may run for miles between open ground and distant slopes, with passing places set neatly along the way. These are small, widened parts of a single-track road, made so that one vehicle can wait while another goes by. There is a gentleness in that custom. A pause, a nod, then the road continues. On either side, the moorland spreads in soft browns, greens, and golds. Heather lies low over the ground. Grasses bend and lift. In damp places, pale heads of bog cotton tremble on thin stems, like small tufts of wool caught in the breeze. Pools of water gather in hollows. Some are no larger than a garden pond, and some are small lochs, known in Scotland as lochans. A lochan is simply a little loch, holding the sky in miniature. The land may look still at first glance, but it is not empty. It is a living place, built slowly and quietly, layer by layer. Across parts of Caithness and Sutherland lies the Flow Country, one of the largest areas of blanket bog in Europe. In 2024, the Flow Country was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List, recognized for its global importance. A blanket bog is a wet peatland that spreads across the land like a blanket. It forms in cool, wet climates, where water slows the decay of plants. Over many years, and then over many centuries, plant remains build up as peat. Peat is partly decayed plant material held in wet ground. It grows very slowly, and because it stores carbon, peatland is important far beyond what the eye can see. The soft moss, the dark pools, the low plants, and the damp earth are all part of a deep natural storehouse. A healthy peatland can hold water, support wildlife, and keep carbon locked away in its layers. Near the surface, sphagnum mosses may grow in cushions and carpets. Sphagnum is a kind of moss, especially important in forming peat. It can hold water like a sponge, helping create the wet conditions that peatlands need. Its colors may be green, rust, gold, or red, depending on the species, the season, and the light. In close view, it is delicate and intricate, a small world of branching stems and soft textures. There may also be sundews, tiny plants that grow in nutrient-poor bogs. Their leaves can glisten with sticky droplets, catching small insects to gain nourishment where the soil offers little. In land that appears simple and open, life has found patient ways to belong. The road continues through this broad country. Sometimes a fence line crosses the moor. Sometimes a white cottage appears at a distance, with smoke or mist lifting faintly behind it. Sometimes sheep graze near the verge, their wool marked by weather and heather seeds. Far away, on a slope, there may be the shape of red deer, though they are not promised. They are common in many highland areas, but the land decides what it will show. Bird life, too, belongs to this openness. A curlew may call somewhere beyond sight, its long falling note carrying across the wet ground. A skylark may rise over rough grass when the season is right, its song suspended in the air. In peatland and northern moor, golden plover may nest, their markings blending with moss and stone. Greenshank may move near pools and wet edges. Hen harriers may sometimes be seen low over open land, and divers may call from remote lochs, though such sightings are always possibilities, never guarantees. The smell changes first. The damp sweetness of peat and heather begins to mingle with salt. The wind feels clearer, with a sharper edge. Low hills fall away toward bays and inlets. The road rises, and for a moment there is a view of the sea, gray-blue beneath a wide sky. Northern beaches can appear suddenly, pale and quiet between headlands. Beyond them, sea cliffs stand with birds moving along their faces. Gulls wheel and settle. Oyster catchers may call along the shore, black and white against wet sand, with bright bills like small marks of color. Kelp lies in dark ribbons where the tide has drawn back. Kelp is large brown seaweed, lifted and lowered by the sea each day. A small settlement rests near the water, its houses turned toward the weather. There may be a harbor, a pier, a post office, a few working boats, and windows reflecting the moving clouds. Nothing needs to happen quickly. The tide keeps its own time. The wind moves through grass. A distant engine hums and fades. Here the northern highlands feel spacious, not because they are empty, but because their details are spread gently across a wide canvas. Moss, water, bird call, peat, stone, road, and sea each have room to be noticed. By evening, the journey reaches a ferry point near the northern coast. The land behind is quiet with moor and lochen. Ahead, the sea lies open, crossed by soft lines of current and light. A ferry waits without urgency, its white sides dimming in the gray-blue dusk. When it moves out at last, the wake smooths slowly behind it. The mainland lowers into shadow. Far ahead, Orkney begins to rise on the horizon, low and calm beneath the wide northern sky. Chapter 10. Orkney Stones and Sea Wind. The road north grows quieter before it reaches the sea. Beyond the wide peatlands and low hills of the mainland, the land narrows toward ferry harbors where the air tastes of salt and rain. Here, journeys begin again by water. Orkney lies to the north of mainland Scotland, not as one island only, but as an archipelago, a group of islands gathered together in the sea. Some ferries cross from Scrabster to Stromness, others travel from Gills Bay to St. Margaret's Hope. Each route has its own rhythm of engines, ropes, gulls, and open water. On this quiet crossing, the ferry moves steadily through gray-blue waves, leaving a pale wake that widens and softens behind it. The mainland slowly becomes a darker line. Ahead, Orkney appears low and green, with fields running toward the edge of the sea. The crossing is not always calm in these northern waters, but today the movement feels measured. Seabirds pass on long wings, the wind carries a clean brightness. The ferry's rail is cool beneath the hand, and the water below is flecked with silver where the light breaks through cloud. As Orkney draws nearer, the island seems shaped by openness. There are no great forests here, no high mountain walls, Instead, there are broad skies, low fields, sandy bays, sea cliffs, freshwater lochs, and the constant presence of wind. Grass bends and rises, waves sound beyond stone walls, houses sit low against the weather, their roofs and windows turn toward changing light. Orkney is known for many layers of history, Norse, medieval, wartime, and modern, but this part of the journey turns gently toward a much older time. The islands hold some of the most important Neolithic archaeology in Europe. Neolithic means the later Stone Age, a time when people farmed, kept animals, made pottery, and built monuments of stone. In Orkney, traces of that world remain close to the surface, held in earth, grass, and weathered rock. The heart of Neolithic Orkney is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for its remarkable ancient places. These sites do not explain themselves completely. Archaeologists study them carefully, but many meanings remain uncertain. That uncertainty can feel peaceful here. The stones stand without hurry. They allow time to be wide. At Scari Brae, beside the sweep of the Bay of Scale, the old village rests low in the ground. It was occupied roughly 5,000 years ago, making it older than Stonehenge and older than the Egyptian pyramids. The village was revealed after a storm in the 19th century, when sand and earth were stripped away from the shore. Now it is protected and studied, and visitors look down into homes built of stone. The houses at Scari Brae are close together, connected by covered passages. Inside them are stone hearths, stone beds, shelves, and simple fittings made from the same flat stone as the walls. The rooms feel familiar and distant at once. They show that people cooked, stored things, gathered, and lived their daily lives here, beside the sea, under the wide northern sky. A little wind moves over the grass above the village. Beyond it, waves fold and unfold on the shore. It is easy to imagine not a finished picture of the past, but a quiet sense of continuity. People watching weather, tending animals, repairing walls, carrying water, and listening to the same sea. Inland, near lochs and open fields, the ring of Brodgar rises from the grass. It is a stone circle, meaning standing stones arranged in a roughly circular shape. The circle is large and spacious, with stones set apart enough for wind and light to pass between them. Some are tall and narrow, some lean slightly. Lichen grows on their surfaces in pale green and gray patches, softening the hard edges of the rock. The exact purpose of the Ring of Brodgar is still debated. It may have been used for gatherings, ceremonies, observing the sky, marking relationships between places, or purposes we do not fully understand. Rather than giving a single answer, the circle offers a feeling of patience. It has stood through seasons of rain, frost, sun, and salt wind. Sheep graze in nearby fields, birds call over the lochs. The stones remain. Not far away are the stones of Stennis, another ancient stone setting. Fewer stones stand here now, but those that remain have a strong presence. They rise from the ground with a quiet vertical grace, dark against pale cloud. The landscape around them is open and low, so that the sky seems especially large. The stones do not need many words. They draw attention to the meeting of earth and weather, to the way a human hand once lifted and placed heavy rock with care. Maze Howe lies nearby, a chambered tomb. A chambered tomb is a stone-built burial place with inner rooms. From outside, Maze Howe looks like a green mound, rounded and still. Within it, a passage leads inward to a carefully built chamber. Its stones were arranged with skill, and the monument is aligned so that around the winter solstice, the low sun can shine along the passage, when conditions allow. Archaeologists continue to study what this meant to the people who built it, and speak with care about belief, memory, and community. All around these places, the Orkney landscape remains quietly alive. Wind moves through grass, water birds rest on lochs, sea cliffs hold the sound of waves below. On sandy bays, the tide leaves smooth, shining stretches of shore. In long northern evenings, the light lingers, turning fields gold and gray, then blue. As the day comes gently toward its close, the stones stand in the salt wind. They are old but not silent in an empty way. They are surrounded by grass, birds, weather, and careful human attention. They remind us that the past can be approached softly, without needing to solve every question. Soon the journey will turn south and east again. Another ferry will carry us back over the water, away from Orkney's low green fields and ancient stones. The sea will widen, then narrow. The mainland coast will return, and in time, under a silver-gray light after rain, the granite city of Aberdeen will begin to appear. Chapter 11. Eastward to Aberdeen and the Cairngorms. The journey turns gently eastward, toward the cooler light of Scotland's northeast coast. After the long openness of the north and the sea wind of Orkney, the land begins to gather into fields, roads, towns, and harbors again. The sky is pale and wide, with a soft band of mist lying close to the horizon. Rain has passed not long before, leaving the pavements clean and the stonework shining. Aberdeen appears gradually, not with haste, but with a quiet steadiness. It is a city on Scotland's northeast coast, where rivers meet the North Sea, and where the harbor has shaped daily life for many generations. Boats, warehouses, bridges, church towers, university buildings, and streets of pale gray stone all belong to its long story. Aberdeen is often called the Granite City. Granite is a hard speckled stone, strong and enduring, and much of the city was built from granite quarried nearby. After rain, the buildings can look silver gray, and in certain light they seem to glimmer very faintly. This is because some Aberdeen granite contains mica, a shiny mineral that catches light in tiny points, like quiet sparks held inside the stone. There is something restful in the way the city reflects the weather. Under cloud, the granite is soft and muted. In sunlight, it brightens. Along a broad street, the fronts of buildings hold a calm dignity, their edges softened by damp air. A gull passes overhead, its call drifting down from above the rooftops. And from the harbor there comes the low, distant sound of work. Engines, ropes, water moving against the quay. Aberdeen has long been connected with fishing and trade, with ships coming and going from the North Sea and beyond. Shipbuilding also formed part of its history, along with education, through its old universities and schools of learning. In more recent times, the city has been closely linked with the North Sea oil and gas industry. These different layers do not replace one another completely. They rest together, like the changing colors in the granite itself. A walk through the city might pass a small garden, a quiet churchyard, or a view down toward the water. The air carries a trace of salt. Sea mist softens the distance, making cranes and masts appear pale and delicate. Nothing needs to be hurried. The city is not only stone and industry, but also parks, riverbanks, students, families, cafes, and the ordinary movements of a living place. In time, the road turns inland, the coast falls behind, and the land begins to rise. The gray of granite gives way to the darker green of trees, the brown of heather and peat, and the muted gold of grasses along the roadside. Villages appear and pass quietly. Rivers run beside the road for a while, then slip away behind banks of birch and alder. The air changes too. It loses some of its salt, and gathers the scent of earth, resin, and rain-washed needles. Ahead lie the Cairngorms, one of Scotland's great mountain regions. The Cairngorms National Park contains mountains, plateaus, rivers, forests, lochs, and villages, all spread across a broad and varied landscape. A plateau is a wide, high area of land, more open and level than a sharp mountain peak, though the weather there can still be severe and changeable. The Cairngorms include some of the highest mountains in the United Kingdom, but today the journey remains low and sheltered, following quiet roads and gentle forest paths. Cloud rests on the distant high ground. The summits are partly hidden, which seems fitting here, where mountains often reveal themselves slowly. A pale line of scree, a shoulder of hill, a patch of lingering brightness on wet rock. These appear through the shifting air, and then soften again. The mountains do not ask to be climbed in this moment. They are simply there, broad and calm, holding the horizon. Lower down, the forest offers another kind of stillness. In places, the Cairngorms contain remnants of Caledonian pine forest. This means native Scots pine woodland, descended from ancient forests that once covered much larger parts of Scotland. The trees stand with reddish bark and high open crowns, letting light fall between them. Beneath them, the ground is springy with needles, moss, blaeberry, and heather. A quiet path leads beside a river. The water is clear and brown gold where it runs over stones, colored by peat and shadow. It moves steadily, making a low sound that seems to belong to the forest itself. Pine resin scents the air, especially where the sun has warmed the bark after rain. A small bird moves somewhere among the branches, unseen, and the needles overhead stir in a light breeze. Wildlife lives here in ways that are often subtle. A red squirrel may pass through the canopy, though it is just as likely to leave only the faint suggestion of movement. Red deer may graze on distant slopes or remain hidden among the trees. Mountain hares live higher up, changing color with the seasons in some areas. Ptarmigan, mountain birds whose plumage also changes with the seasons, blend carefully into stony uplands. Golden eagles may sometimes be seen far above open country, but only with patience and good fortune. There are pine martens too, mostly secretive and active when people are not nearby. And there is the capercaillie, a large woodland grouse, now rare and vulnerable in Scotland. It is enough to know that such birds belong to these forests, and that they are best protected by leaving them undisturbed, keeping to paths, and allowing the woodland its own quiet life. Evening begins to gather in the spaces between the trees. The river darkens slightly, though the sky remains pale above the branches. The path turns back toward the road, and the forest settles behind it, scented with pine and damp earth. Soon the journey will bend toward one final highland loch. For now, the last light rests on the water, on the stones, and on the trunks of the old pines as the road curves onward into the softening dusk. Chapter 12. A Quiet Farewell by a Highland Loch. By the time the journey comes to its quiet closing, the road has turned inland again, away from the sea wind and the open northern coast, toward a small freshwater loch held among highland hills. A freshwater loch is an inland lake, filled not by the tide, but by rain, streams, springs, and the slow gathering of water from the land around it. Many lochs in Scotland were shaped long ago by glaciers, great moving rivers of ice that pressed through valleys and hollows during colder ages of the earth. When the ice withdrew, it left basins where water could rest, clear or dark, shallow at the edges, and deeper toward the middle. This loch lies still in the long evening light. The sky has not yet darkened fully. In northern Scotland, twilight can linger gently in the warmer months, spreading the change between day and night into a wide, soft interval. Twilight is the light after sunset, or before sunrise, when the world is neither bright nor dark, but held in a calm in-between. A small wooden jetty reaches a little way out from the shore. Its boards are silvered by weather and softened by years of rain. Near its posts, reeds move lightly in the water. Reeds are tall plants that grow in shallow places, their narrow leaves bending with the faintest breeze. They make a quiet brushing sound, almost like cloth being folded. Across the loch, the hills are changing color. What was green in the afternoon has become blue-gray, and then a deeper shade, as if the slopes are slowly settling into the evening. Heather grows on the higher ground, and where rain fell earlier, the air holds its scent, earthy, clean, and faintly sweet. Near the water's edge, moss darkens the stones. Small plants lean out between roots. A few ripples widen and fade. The loch is not perfectly silent. Natural quiet is made of small sounds. A bird calls once from far across the water. Somewhere among the trees, leaves stir and then are still. A duck moves close to the reeds, leaving a narrow V behind it. In a season like this, swallows or martins may pass low over the surface, gathering insects in the last light. Later, when the air grows dimmer, bats may appear near the shore, turning softly through the dusk. Lochs like this are living places. Beneath the surface, fish move through cool water. Aquatic plants root in the shallows. Birds may feed, nest, or rest nearby, depending on the season and the shape of the shore. Around the loch, woodland, moorland, and wet ground meet in quiet layers. On a distant slope, if the evening is fortunate, red deer might be seen as small brown shapes against the fading grass, though they keep their own distance and belong to the hillside. Here, beside the water, the long tour of Scotland gathers itself into one still view. There was the first dusk in Edinburgh, with the castle dark on Castle Rock and lamps glowing along narrow closes. There were the old stones of the Royal Mile in pale morning, the worn steps, the kirks, the winds, and the cool air between tall buildings. There was the river Forth near Stirling, bending through green fields below the castle heights, its loops shining softly under a changing sky. There were the wooded slopes of the Trossachs and the reflective waters of Loch Katrine, where birch leaves flickered and the paths smelled of rain. There was Glencoe in mist, its steep sides rising with a hush of old rock and running water. There was Ben Nevis above Fort William, partly hidden by cloud, the highest mountain in the British Isles, standing quietly beyond the loch and the town. Then came the Western Road, the sea locks, the gulls, and the bridge to Skye. The island held its moorland, crofts, changing weather, and the dark shapes of the Cuillin. Farther north, wide skies opened over peatland and small lochans, where blanket bogs spread across the land like a slow living quilt. Beyond the mainland, Orkney offered grass, sea wind, and ancient stones standing in patient circles. Eastward again, Aberdeen's granite shone after rain, and the Cairngorm forests breathed with pine scent and river sound. Now all those places seemed to rest here together. City Stone, River Bend, Wooded Loch, Misty Glen, High Mountain, Island Shore, Northern Bog, Sea-worn Archaeology, Granite Street, and Pine Forest. The water holds the last of the light. The jetty grows darker. The reeds continue their small motion, bending and rising. Hills fade from green into blue, and from blue into the first gentle dark. One more ripple moves outward, then smooths away. The loch remains calm and deep under the soft highland twilight, and with it, the journey comes to a quiet close.